Hello YouTube, this is G from TekScene. I am doing a quick, hopefully quick video update on the Sofabaton X2 remote control. I am not done with my official review, but I wanted to get out there a quick how-to on using it to control Home Assistant devices. As you can see here, I have my devices set up. Let me show you this here. So lights, fan, my poster, screen, and theater, a special device I use. The blinds, the curtains, my step lights that are also controlled through Home Assistant. So I'm gonna demo it using the room lights. Oh, and High Maple. So I'm gonna show you. I can turn on the lights. I can't touch it. Change the intensity of it all through Home Assistant. And let me turn them off right now. So for those of you who are on a X1 or X1S remote control, I achieved that in the past with that remote as well, using a emulated Roku device on Home Assistant and by configuring a Roku Home Assistant device, and I had all of my activities set up, all of my my actions set up that way, and I would include that device into my activities, and it would give me access to everything. The setup was a little bit cumbersome. It was hard to maintain and add new commands in there. So yeah, the X2 made it much simpler in that it's easy to add commands, add new devices, and separate everything. So without further ado, I'm gonna show you how to configure it. Now, the way Sofabaton X2 speaks with Home Assistant is through MQTT. That's basically a publisher subscriber type of messages. There's an add-on in Home Assistant that to install MQTT or Mosquito. Directly installing it might or might not work through add-on on your Home Assistant setup, and it's completely dependent on how you set up Home Assistant. I'm running it inside of a VM, so the add-on store is available. If you're running Home Assistant into Docker, you will need to install MQTT separately from your Home Assistant instance. I'm gonna switch to Home Assistant and show you how to do that. So the first thing you want to go is under settings. You want to come under add-ons, and you want to go to the add-on store, and you are looking for MQTT, so the Mosquito broker, and you want to click the install button. Mine's already installed. I have it start on boot, and I enable the watchdog for it to restart automatically should it be turned off. So that's the one thing. Second thing you want to do is create different logins. I created one for Sofabaton to be able to talk to MQTT and publish messages, but I also created a separate one for Home Assistant to be able to read those messages from MQTT. You could reuse the same, but I thought it'd be easier to just have a different user for each of my producers and consumers. I did not enable any of the certificate. It's local usage only, and I left the ports by default. Now, when you change that configuration here, make sure you click that save button, because there's another one here, and otherwise it will not take effect. That's this part. Once that broker is running, the next step you want to do is make sure it's started, right? Now, once that's done, we want to go into the Sofabaton app, and we want to go into the Me portion of it, and you want to connect to Home Assistant MQTT broker, right? You confirm it's installed, and you enter the IP address of your Home Assistant, or from the MQTT broker, right? I already done that step, but it does not support a host name. It only supports an IP address. You keep the default port at 1883, and you use the username and password that you set up in the previous step while setting up the add-on. Now, I'm not gonna do this, but once you connect and it accepts connection, it doesn't give anything else other than it connected. So that's basically it. Now that we've got that part, we have the MQTT running and the Sofabaton app is connected to it, we want to create a different device. So the way to do that, you go into the device tab and you click the plus to create a new device. And so the Home Assistant connection is through the Wi-Fi, and you create a Home Assistant remote. So the first thing it asks, it's a little bit weird. It asks you for commands. So now let's say I'm setting up my lights. I would create a command that would be on for my lights, and I'm going to confirm that. I'm going to add a new one that would be off for my lights, right? And I'm going to leave it at this, but now that's where you would add all of the commands for your given device. Increase, decrease, set percentages. That's where you would do that. So, and you can see here the payload is really important because that's what we will be using to detect which command from which device has been issued from Sofabaton from the user. So now, for now, I'm going to keep those on and off commands for that new device. I'm going to create it and I'm going to call it YouTube demo, and icon doesn't matter. I'm going to keep it as is. So here I have my new YouTube demo, and if I click on it, I have on and off. Currently, they don't do anything but sending a message to the MQTT broker. So now that we have the Sofabaton connected to Home Assistant and a device created with 2 commands, what we can do is we can basically go in using MQTT Explorer, or depending on your machine, any type of client for MQTT, right? So I have my Home Assistant server, and I'm using the Home Assistant username and password that we have not set yet in Home Assistant, but I can still connect to the broker, and I see that the broker is the information. If I press the on button on the new activity that we created in Sofabaton, we can see here that the new topic was created with the up, and we see that device ID 18 and key ID 1. And if I press off, we'll see that it switches to device ID 18 and key ID 2. So it's basically each time I'm pressing a command in my devices, they issue a new MQTT message. So the remote side of things is actually working as expected. Now what we need is for Home Assistant to be able to decode this information. Now here, if you look at the topic name, right, FC, this is the MAC address from my Sofabaton hub, and that's what you need to use for a topic name, but we'll see that later. It's also available in the Sofabaton. If I go and edit this and I go back to edit commands, it's not showing anymore. Let's try a new command. It is showing here. You see the topic name is right here, and the new command payload would look like this. Well, I'm just gonna create it and extra. So see, it's the same. So the topic name never changes across all the devices and the commands. The only thing that changes is the payload. I'm gonna go back to this here, and I'm gonna switch to Home Assistant for this one. Now that we have the remote control talking to that MQTT broker, what we need is we need to be consuming those messages. So if I go here into settings, hold on, I'm on the wrong window. So if I go back here into settings and I come into automation and scenes, no, that's not true. There's one thing. We need to enable Home Assistant to connect to that MQTT broker. So we go into add integration here, look for MQTT, and I'm going to create a new MQTT, and I'm connecting to the official Mosquitto MQTT add-on, so it's easier. Otherwise you would have to enter your own connection detail, so username and password. And here my connection is created. If you were to connect to your own MQTT, you need to provide the IP address, the port, the username, and password. So by default, since I'm using the add-on, it's slightly easier. And for now, we're gonna go into automations and scenes, and you see that I have my X2 theater automations for each of my devices. I have that system one that is generic, that I use as part of all of my activities to automatically close the blinds and open them back up, or handle the lighting when I turn on and off the system. But if you want to keep it simple to just control your lights and finish configuration of this device, I'm gonna show you how it's done. So the first step would be to create an automation that is based on MQTT, right? And that's where it's important, is the MQTT topic to listen to. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna take it from my lights. I'm gonna look at this. So this is the topic that we saw earlier on MQTT Explorer, and that was given to me by the app. It's basically the MAC address / up for that that hub. So here, if I go into automation and scenes, I create a new automation. The trigger is MQTT, and I'm gonna say every time I'm receiving a message from this topic, I'm gonna do, for now, I'm gonna use a device light, and I'm gonna toggle my light, make it easier to show on camera. So I'm gonna toggle the light, and I'm gonna do theater lights. So I'm gonna save this, and I'm gonna call it YouTube demo. So now let me run this and make sure that this works. This one didn't work. Well, I think this device doesn't support it. Let me use on instead. Lights, turn on. I'm gonna add my theater, save. So now, if I run this action, my lights turned on. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate this one, and I'm gonna switch it to, not duplicate, I'm gonna do lights, turn off. I'm gonna add the same theater lights. So right now, running this should turn off and on my lights. So if we go back to this camera, and I am using this remote that was synchronized, I have my YouTube demo device, and if I click on it, I have on, off, and extra. Now I pressed on and it turned on and off. If I press it again, it turns on and off, right? But the problem right now is it will do this on every single buttons, because every time I'm sending something on that topic, it just gets a message and applies it. Now what we need to do is to make sure that we are getting it properly for each action separately and act accordingly. Now, how you can do this is going into here. I'm going to go into MQTT Explorer, and I'm going to take that message is basically the last message that I received. See, we have a device ID, we have a key ID. My previous message was key 2, and the last one was 3. So I'm going to go back into Home Assistant here, and I'm going to go onto that message. So I'm going to go back to, yeah, this one. So now I'm going to put here, there we go. So device ID 18. So that's the device ID for my new device, and I'm gonna show it to you here. Here, if I do edit on this and go back to my command list, we can see on each of them the device ID is 18 on all 3 of them, and see on as key ID 1, key ID 2, and key ID 3 for off and extra. So we know that it's always going to be device ID 18 for this device, and let's remember 1, 2, and 3 for on, off, and extra. So if I go back to Home Assistant here, what I want to do is limit this to 3. So technically right now with this as is, that means that it will only respond to the extra button I created, and not the on and off. And let me show that to you. If I put on, nothing happened. If I put off, nothing happened. If I push extra, then it worked. So it filtered out that single message from Home Assistant. So now that's good, but what we want is actually have an action for each of them. Now that's where it gets a little bit tricky, but you could create an automation for each of your device and actions and have them all show here into your automations. But that would be cluttering everything if you had one, like say one for the theater lights on, theater lights off. So there's a better way to do that. What I did, let me go onto my lights and see here, I have the payload that triggers on 1. 1 is my lights first device on my remote, so that's instead of 18, my lights are 1. And I'm gonna go into YAML mode because it's not supported from the UI, but I'm just gonna copy something. So for this one, I want this value template, and I'm gonna add this in the description below. So I basically instruct that the payload value that I'm looking is the device ID only. So the value JSON of the message, the attribute device ID, I want it to be matching 1. So I'm going to go back into our new YouTube demo app, and I'm going to go here on that trigger, and I'm going to do edit in YAML, and I'm going to be adding this. So meaning that the payload value here is going to be anything that matches the device ID. And for our case, I'm going to put the value at 18 for this device. So when I look at this now, it's still in, I can go back to Visual Editor. I'm matching 18, but the attribute that we added is still there. The value template stays there, whether or not you can see it. So now, if I close this, we're back to not filtering any of the values, but we simplified the trigger to support multiple ones. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add an action, and I'm going to go using a block, and I'm going to use a choose option that I'm going to move first, because that's what we want to do. And see, there's option 1. I'm going to do adding an option and adding a third one for each of our actions. And see, option 1, 2, and 3 will be matching the IDs from each of our keys. So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call it on. I'm going to rename this one off. And let's keep that one name. I'll call it extra to match our actions. Now I'm going to move this into I'm just going to cut it. And that was the on option. I'm going to bring this. I'm going to add action here, and I'm just going to paste that one. And I'm going to do the same for the one that's off. I'm going to cut this one. And you could add your actions manually. I'm just saving a step here, and I'm going to paste that one. So now each option would apply this, but they have no condition. What we want is to go by the key ID of each of them. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to go and copy this from my other one, and that's what it looks like. I say if the trigger, which is our MQTT action, the payload JSON, which is the message, and the key ID, which is the actual command number that from that device, I'm gonna copy this and bring it over to our YouTube demo application. So if I come here and I do add a condition, and I'm gonna use template condition, and that's the value here. So if key number 1 from the device that we already filtered here is going to be on. And if I come here on to the second one, the condition is still going to be template. And I'm going to say for action number 2, this is lights off. So again, the first thing we're filtering by device ID at the when MQTT message at the trigger, we filter by the device ID, and then for each of those actions here are based on the key ID. So right now the number 3, well, I'm not going to bother about using it. So now that this is saved, if I go back to the camera here, now it's live, not tested. If I press on, the lights are turning off, on, and if I press off, the lights are turning off, and if I press extra, nothing happens because I didn't configure anything on them. All right, so this is how you use Sofabaton X2 connected to MQTT, and you listen to the messages on MQTT from Home Assistant to trigger activities. Now there's another thing that I like to do for more complex devices, is I come into that automation and I do change mode, and I'd like to either, depending on my use case, either queue them or make them in parallel. The reason to do that is if you have if you use single and you start mixing multiple actions from Home Assistant that controls multiple devices, and you use single only the last one, or if you do multiple key press, only the last one, the first one and or the last one will be executed. But if you are making a sequence to turn on multiple devices, you want all of them to be applied. So queued will force them to be executed in the order in which you pressed your keys, because you can assign all the commands to direct keys and activities on or even on the device. But if you don't mind about the order, you just want them to be executed, that's where you would set them up to parallel, meaning do them at the same time and the order doesn't matter. So queued is probably a safer option for most use cases, and depending if what you're doing parallel can be interesting as well. So it will queue in this current configuration. It will queue up to 10 key presses, one after the other. Now you don't want to make that value too high, because that could make if you press so many buttons, it could overload your system and just catch up later, and you could have actions being triggered for a very long time. I think 10 is a sane default value. So that's about it, and I'm gonna be saving this. I have my YouTube demo matching the actions for my YouTube demo device that we set up on the remote itself. I can show you different ones I created. So I have one for my blinds, and you can see, for instance, my blinds device ID 14. Same thing here, same value, a template. And all my actions are based, if the template is 1, 2, I have them named to match accordingly on what I defined on the remote. So I have quick buttons to open, close, or set different values. And the same thing here, I was telling you about the system. I have power on, power off is basically a different device that I will include in all my activities, and that one has a on-off device option sequence set up. Yeah, maybe I should talk about this. Let's go back to the Sofabaton app. So when you go to edit for the lights, I don't want anything on this device to turn on and off, even if it's part of an activity. So I'm gonna disable automatic power control, right? And input sources, that one doesn't need any input sources. It's just actions to Home Assistant. So I did that as an update. Now for my theater on and off, that one's taking a little longer. Now for my where is it? My theater is my on and off. What I did here is I enable automatic power control, right? And what I did is turn on I set up to control theater on, and turn off I send the theater off command to Home Assistant, and that hold on, that one took a little while to show up on screen. So it will turn off automatically. It will run the turn off command on Home Assistant. So if I go back to my Home Assistant here, you see power on, I do multiple actions. First of all, I turn on a Boolean helper to keep track of the state of my system in Home Assistant to make more complicated automations. But I also will close the curtains, turn on the light very dim, and that's about it. And depending on if the position of the sun, I will close the blinds or the curtains. And well, I will close the blinds only if there's a lot of light outside. Otherwise, I'd just close the curtains. And same thing for my off. Depending on the light positions and the sun position and everything, I'm gonna have different actions on whether I open my blinds and curtains or I just turn on the lights at night and leave the curtains closed. And I turn off the fan. No matter if it was turned on or off, I just make sure it's off at the end when I'm done with the system. So that's how I use that one. And to make sure that it's part of my activities, I just have it set in here. Right now I'm not done with the review for the X2, so I only have one activity set up, but it's very similar to how I did it with the X1. If I go into my activity and I see that I have on watch collect and the contains, that's where I selected my theater device that supports on and off. And by including it there, it will execute the action for the first activity I start. It will turn it on, and as I switch activities, it will not re-execute it. And when I'm hitting that big off button on top, then that's when it will run the off sequence of the theater. Now you can easily, for each activity, you could come in and add the lights, for instance, the fan, or whatever you deem necessary for that activity, and assign any of the commands on that device to your remote. Or you can choose to go back to devices and select them manually and run the commands that are available there, or assigned to some of your remote buttons. That's it, guys. I hope that's helpful for you. I've seen a few questions about how to set up Home Assistant to be controlled by the X2 remote control. It's great to see this as a first-class citizen in the ecosystem, and so far it works very, very well. That's one of the features I was really looking for on the X2. Now, I have not completely set up my X2 to make a full review with all my activities. There's there's some firmware issue with Bluetooth devices, and all my devices are Bluetooth. There was a release this morning. I wanted to get this video out, so I have done the update on the firmware, but I have not tested it with it. And as I add more activities and get it to a more stable state, I will gladly offer a complete review of that remote. It still does feel good in hand. The buttons work great. The Home Assistant integration is working absolutely fantastic. But please let me know if you have any questions, if you have any comments. If any of you guys are still interested of how I did it with my X1S remote control, I would be willing to share, but it's a lot more complicated than it is to achieve with the X2 remote control. But it's doable, and I've been using it, and it works very well on the X1S as well, using an emulator Roku device, but it's a lot more complicated to get set up and running. That's it. Please like and subscribe if you like my content, or if you want to be notified when my full review on the X2 comes out. Thank you.